Merry Christmas, folks. I hope everyone had a joy-filled, blessed, peaceful, loving, fun Christmas. Today's the 26th. I originally jumped on yesterday because I wanted to record something in the spirit, and of course, that was the one I accidentally deleted while trying to crank out a Christmas card real quick. So here we are on the 26th instead, and hey, must have been meant to be that way. Better this way anyway. So I wanted to talk real quick about the grand conjunction that went down on December 21st. A lot of you may have heard of it. There were pictures of Saturn and Jupiter conjoined in the sky. It was visible. Closest they've been to Earth in a long time, and closest they've been to each other. So it was a kind of, almost mainstream story. But the backstory and the reason, astrologically why it's significant is sort of what it means for the future. And that's what I wanted to touch on. The backstory behind Saturn and Jupiter being conjoined now in Aquarius is that for the last year they've been conjoined in Capricorn. And Capricorn and Aquarius represent two very different sort of astrological climates. Okay, in Capricorn, Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. Saturn, the story of Saturn or Kronos. Saturn was the original god of the universe until he had a son, Jupiter. And Saturn was told Jupiter would one day replace him as king of the universe or god of the universe. And so it was Saturn's children or Kronos' children who actually knew the secret. So Kronos actually ate his children to darken the secret that Jupiter would one day rule the universe. Jupiter eventually found out and eventually did rule the universe and did pardon Saturn in the end. That is what Capricorn represents. Capricorn is an earth sign, which means Capricorn is ruled by three-dimensional reality. The laws that govern three-dimensional reality make a lot of room for mistruth and lies and deception. Capricorn energy puts society before the individual. Capricorn energy seeks to be a good little participant in society. Capricorn energy seeks to withhold, and it seeks to exact power, to sort of have an outcome. Dr. David Hawkins had a book called Power versus Force. Capricorn energy is about force. It's about using leverage to make things happen. It's about using people's cognition and intellect and skepticism against them, right? That's what force is. Power, on the other hand, exists without any form of leverage. Power is love, power is justice, power is peace. These are true sources of power that do not need any leverage in order to create a result. So power versus force. So in the age of Capricorn, force is what's being used right now. And up until now, the two biggest planets in our solar system, Saturn and Jupiter, the two great amplifiers of whatever astrological climate they're in, have been in that climate, which is why we've seen things locking down, which is why we've encountered censorship at such a profound level that it's become obvious. They're not even hiding it anymore. They're just sort of throwing it in our faces and telling us to go to hell. That is Capricorn. So these two megaliths, Jupiter and Saturn, have moved out of Capricorn. As of the 21st, they crossed over the galactic center and moved into Aquarius, fulfilling the Mayan prophecy. The Mayan prophecy also said that this year would be the apocalypse, and what they meant by the apocalypse was the lifting of the veil, right? That would be the revelation of truth, because they knew what Capricorn was, and they know what Aquarius is. They know what Jupiter and Saturn are, and they know what sort of the cause and effect will be in Capricorn, and they anticipated what that cause and effect would be when they shifted over the galactic center and into Aquarius. So we've been talking about Capricorn energy. Now let's talk about Aquarius. Aquarian energy is the energy of reason. It's the energy of transparency. It's the energy of truth. It's the energy of logic. It's the energy of that which makes sense, sort of being allowed to make sense. In Capricorn, if you tried to make sense out of what was going on, you got hurt, right? You were a pariah. You were called a conspiracy theorist. You were paddling upstream. that which was crazy was sort of positioned as being sane, and that which is sane has actually been sort of barked and screamed at as being crazy. Well, now that we're in Aquarius, now that these two megaliths are in Aquarius, we are now going to amplify the Aquarian energy through the lens of Saturn and Jupiter. Jupiter is the great expander, Saturn is the enforcer of rules. So Saturn, though its energy can at times appear to be unjust, if you take its essence and you put it into a just sign, now the truth will be the law again. Saturn enforces whichever law. In Capricorn, it enforced the three-dimensional law, right? The law of Earth. Now we're in Aquarius, right? Air. We're in a five-dimensional world now. So it's going to enforce the laws of the fifth dimension, not the third dimension. Okay? Fifth dimension, laws of fifth dimension, compassion, unity, the opposite of division, right? Separation in Capricorn, the greatest hoax ever pulled on all of us. There is no separation. That is the law, however, in Capricorn. You take unity and you make it law in Aquarius, and that which makes sense is allowed to make sense. And now, unity becomes the law. Now truth becomes the law. Now transparency becomes the law. And so this is what's happening. So people who make sense will no longer be pariahs. People who make sense will actually have whatever sense it is they're trying to make manifest in reality. People who make sense will sort of have the wind at their backs now, where it was sort of in their faces for the last 3 years. So that's a big change, and it's a big opportunity. And it also, should be noted that the force with which these draconian principles of, censorship, social conditioning, and the sort of cognitive dissonance inspiring media, these are being leveraged upon us through force aggressively right now in direct measure to the potential that we are shifting into, right? The need to suppress, the need to silence, the need to shut down, the need to stymie free thought has been so heavily leveraged upon us because of the potential that now exists. Sort of the more lights they could put out before the 21st, the better off they were going to be beyond the 21st, because that would be less love, less reason they would have to contend with. And those who sort of seek to force the darkness upon us right now fear love, and they fear reason, and they fear the truth because they can't control it. So that is why this has sort of been levied upon us with such ferocity, for such a consistent period of time. That's why when we look around, people have masks on and rights are being taken from them unless they agree or consent. If you jab something into someone without their consent, or telling them that they'll lose their job if they don't let you stick whatever you want to stick in them, whatever. Can't do that. But that's the world we live in right now, and that's not going to make sense anymore, right? The truth is coming out. We have taken the two biggest planets in the solar system, crossed over the galactic center, fulfilling a Mayan prophecy wherein the veil would be pulled back and the truth would actually be the new reality. And it's happening. Look around. That's what's happening. So all of this is to say that it's been tough. It's been tough for me for as long as I can remember, because my true north has always been the truth. I've always had a profound faith, and that's just sort of what has led me. And trust me, thinking like that, and the closer we've gotten sort of to 2020, the sort of more weird it's become for people who think that way. But it's not going to be as tough anymore. New information will be coming to light, because as people who have way more influence and power than I have the same revelations on sort of a macro level as we're all having down here on the micro level. Jupiter will take that and amplify it. Saturn will take that and enforce it. So just keep going. It's going to get easier. Going back to censorship real quick. I don't know how many of you are aware of Instagram's new terms and conditions, but if you're using Instagram right now, you've actually consented to these new terms and conditions just because you use Instagram. Keep in mind also that Facebook owns Instagram, and we all know who owns Facebook. Having said all that, I just want to share a few of the new terms and conditions that can be found in Instagram's invasion of privacy terms. First of all, they have access to your device's information, which means they have access to everything on your computer. So every document, every app. They also have access to other devices on your network. They also have been granted access through your uninformed consent to your entire text history. And I mean, of course, Instagram needs to be able to have access to your entire text history, right? And they also have access to all of your accounts, would include bank accounts, medical records, credit card accounts. They'd also have access to your camera, which means that at any time your device was on, they would have access to what your camera is seeing. We kind of have to ask why they would even want access to all that information. I mean, they're here to be a source of cross-communication for their audience and users. They're not here to spy on their audience. They're not here to invade the privacy of their audience, and that's what they want to do. And we kind of have to ask why. And in a capitalist society, it doesn't really make sense. Like, why would they waste their time spying on people, to get their jollies off? Because it's a free country anyway, right? But if we think in terms of communism and fascism, then we can start to understand a little bit better the focus of those invasions. We can understand a little bit better why they would want access to that kind of stuff. And it reminds me of something I learned about spies and about spying. They spy on you. And they catch you messing up. They catch you doing things that you shouldn't be doing. And they blackmail you into working for them. If you sort of pay attention to who's doing ridiculous, if you look at sort of the widespread election fraud and sort of the cast of characters in and throughout the government holding very esteemed positions who are flat out not doing their jobs right now. The secretaries of state who are withholding information and having to be subpoenaed. If we think about justices, who are refusing to hear cases because they're afraid to do the right thing. Why? And, if we think about how the machines are rising against us right now, and that's what's happening. This is sort of the rise of AI, right? When the machines that we use, that have been sort of embedded in our society to sort of keep track with one another, start keeping track of us, when they turn on us and start gathering information about us that whoever the heck cares about that kind of stuff can leverage against us to create force so that they can move us around the chessboard. Those are spy moves, intelligence agency moves. Those are tactics, that were developed after World War II to basically blackmail people, enlist and have them making really just cognitive dissonance inspiring decisions like we're seeing all over the place right now with this election garbage. It just doesn't make sense. And when things don't make sense on this side, and then on this side we sort of have the rise of this sort of artificial intelligence that's now sort of tracking and monitoring us, and we sort of look at what the tactics, the CIA used, and then we start looking at these tactics that these people, who used to just have social media companies are now sort of using against us. We kind of have to wonder, like, what did the CIA get on these people to sort of leverage these people to start using these networks to deploy intelligence strategies on the people? It's as if social media are using the same tactics that were used on them, that were used to entrap them, that were used to entrap their leaders who got sort of busted doing something they shouldn't, to try and do the same thing to us. That's happening, okay? That's happening. And as long as you continue to sort of assume that if you paddle upstream and do the right thing and say the right thing, it's going to have an unsuccessful outcome, those sorts of things are going to gain ground. Now, what I told you about the truth sort of being allowed to manifest now that Jupiter and Saturn have moved into Aquarius, fulfilling the Mayan prophecy, I would encourage you now more than ever to push hard for the truth, to push hard to do the right thing, to push hard, to have common sense and discernment and live your life according to that common sense and discernment, because transparency is coming. The truth is coming. They've been trying to discourage us up until now. The cool thing about Capricorn, the cool thing about all the lessons that Jupiter and Saturn taught us in Capricorn about injustice led to us having a much stronger work ethic. We've been paddling upstream for the last 3 years. Now we're paddling downstream, the sails are up, and we've got the wind at our back. So we've been out in the parking lot doing push-ups, getting ready for this moment. And now all we have to do is keep doing what we've been doing. Just don't let up. And things are gonna get better. It's gonna change. We just have to keep at it. So thanks for listening. I love everybody, and I'll see you next time.